Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Tuesday, December 18th, and this is our last meeting of the year. How this year has gone by quickly, and this has been quite an interesting week since we last met.
A successful week in
Yeah.
many respects.
Right. We had the special town meeting, and Select Board member Hamilton was in Israel
Yes.
for the last meeting, plus the town meeting. And then, of course, on Friday, we got the news of Newbury College closing. So this has been quite an eventful week. I thought I was going to have a quiet weekend, but it didn't turn out that way. Any announcements? Okay, public comment. So we have Ms. Frawley.
Good evening, Regina Frawley from Precinct 16. I wish you all a very happy holiday season and a healthy new year. I want to obviously talk about Newbury College. That's what I wrote on the line. I'm glad to see that the action that so many of us are doing is letting you know that we think this is terribly serious. Opportunity can slip away. I'm a little confused. I checked into the deeds today of Newbury College, and the town has had liens on every property there, all 7 properties, since a year ago, July. So I don't know why. I don't know if they didn't pay their water bill or what, but they weren't going anyplace unless they paid their liens. And I would like to sense of when and what your actions will be in terms of looking at, or the scope of what you might be. It says 10 acres in the document I just had in my packet, but we may not need all 10. I don't know if you have a grand plan, but it starts with the real serious reach out to Newbury to say, hold whatever you plan to do, hold on, we're interested. And it's very clear town meeting members and the public are already on board saying, let's go for this. So how we play it, some of us want that for a school, and we would like the buildings to remain. We figure most of them are relatively up to code. That could solve all these lease problems we have with, we're in transition, having kids in this building or that building, and we pay money to rehab those buildings, such as the one on Harvest Street, and so on and so forth. It would be wonderful and a dream come true if all our problems could be solved with one building purchase. So I hope that's how you're looking at it, that we never have to go through what we've been going through. Thank you.
Mr. Van Scoyac.
John Van Scoyac, town meeting member, Precinct 13. And yes, Heather, you missed quite a meeting last Thursday. And one of the things that happened at that meeting is that someone at some point, and I regret I don't remember who it was, but someone got up to the microphone and thanked you folks for all of your efforts on the issue of meeting the school expansion or school enrollment challenges in Brookline that have gone on for many years now. And as soon as I heard that person thanking you, I thought to myself, I should have said that. So I didn't say it then, but I'll say it now. Granted, I was on the side of, arguing against Articles 3 and 4, but not out of any failure to appreciate your efforts over the years. And as far as what happened today that prompts my being here right now, it started with the news Friday of Newbury College suddenly announcing, to the surprise of everyone, that it is going to close. And some of us who were advocates at town meeting for the Doggett Amendment we have no interest in refighting any of those issues. If the news of Newberry College's intentions hadn't suddenly appeared on Friday, we wouldn't be here tonight. We're very interested, now that that news has become public, we're very interested in being a part of a positive effort to pursue that possible sale and acquisition, and to realize the full potential of that possible sale and acquisition. And so in this letter that we circulated, we set out a number of reasons why we think the Newberry news, I won't say that it's a sale, it isn't even a sale yet, is an enormous opportunity for the town, and that we should move aggressively to do our best to take advantage of it. We're not naive. We know that this is all about if they bring it to the market, if among the bidders for it, we are the bidder that succeeds in purchasing it, if the price is right, if. There's many ifs. But on the other hand, you can sort of look at the maybes if we do succeed in purchasing it. Maybe it will, in fact, coincide with some needs of the school system for space immediately. Maybe it will offer the kind of large-scale land siting that is a much better choice should we need a ninth school. And I don't want to get into, do we need a ninth school, don't we need a ninth school, should we need a ninth school?
Or a 10th school, for that matter.
Or a 10th school, or a 10th school. Maybe, broadly speaking, this can solve other problems beyond just the school enrollment problem. Maybe it can help us to address the capacity needs, broadly speaking, across the town, across town departments. Maybe. But the one thing that is true, even with all those ifs and all those maybes, is that you've got people here tonight who were on opposing sides of one another over a question, who want to come together over an opportunity. And so I'll leave it at that. The next step is up to you folks, and we look forward, depending on that step, to being part of this process going forward. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Doggett, before you speak, let me just say something. I know, first I'll start with a thank you for putting forth your amendment at town meeting. It's difficult sometimes to get out front and advocate something, especially when I know this board was not on board, but you chugged on, and I thought you made a very good and honorable case. You argued it in a principled, honorable way, and I think we're all better off for it, and certainly got me thinking. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I'd like to congratulate the board and the school committee on doing an excellent job at shepherding what is a very, very complicated question, and obviously a lot of opinions, and I certainly support what town meeting has done. It's a good step moving forward. That being said, on Friday we had this news, and to a number of us, it looked like this was a great opportunity to perhaps address a number of problems in the town. For years we've been talking about not having enough land, not having enough resources, and the large parcel study, where are they? All of a sudden, potentially, this is on our doorstep. And we thought that we would like to gather the energy that there was at town meeting and put it in a positive way to help the board, and this is what we're here for. I certainly endorse Mr. von Skoyak's words, every one of them, on that front, and just urge the board to take a look at this and understand, and really a thorough evaluation of what problems can this property solve for the town. That's really what I think everybody believes there are problems to be solved, but what problems specifically would make it worthwhile making that investment, which is a significant sum of money. So I'm going to be brief and just say that we really look forward to working with the board on this issue. And I think, as evidenced by our letter, there are a lot of folk out there that want to join in and be positive and help move this forward for the town. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you very much for your
Thank you.
attention.
Ms. Snyder?
Okay. So I'm Ruth Ann Snyder. I'm a town meeting member in the Pierce School District, and I have grandchildren in the Baker School District, just to put it all out there for you. And I came here this evening because I was concerned that you weren't going to go forward quickly on this matter, and I wanted to give you a little kick to get you going. And I was angry and I'm disappointed. I always thought that Baker Pierce should go first. If our town ran like an emergency room, Pierce is in much greater need than Baker. And I know I've been in both buildings. I know both communities really well. And so that was my sour grapes. I wanted you to buy Harvard Street. But I have before me now Mel's, update to the board. And I'm going to believe that everything here is very sincere and well-intended, and that you will do everything possible in a very transparent way to make us confident that you're going forward, as my mother would say, with your right foot forward, and you really would you see the better, the well-being of this move for the entire town, not just for the school-age population, but for the entire town. So I'm going to keep a close eye on you guys, and I wish you well. I hope it works well for the town and for everyone.
So we put on the calendar an update on the Newberry College closing, and I'm going to move that up, being that this has been the topic of public comment, and I know it's a topic that is of very broad interest. And I'll just say before I turn it over to Mr. Kleckner that since the news on Friday, this is the thing I've been thinking about a lot and doing some work on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kleckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think what has been said tonight is certainly the feeling that I have, and any time a major property of that size and significance potentially becomes available, I think the town is obligated to review its options, not only to look at what property might be available for municipal or school uses for our own purposes, but if not that, certainly having the information and strategy to help control the land use if it, for example, is sold to a developer. I think the only way to do that, and I will say that for the first time, yesterday really understood the full depth, scope of that campus and some of the buildings, and I just want to I don't know, maybe caution people to say that those buildings are not turnkey by any means. I mean, they're some very old buildings, and they're well cared for, but they're old. And so I just, it's going to take a lot of analysis, but I think we should get to it and get to it soon. I also want to mention that we've had a very good relationship with Newberry, and I want to respect their need to look out for their priority, which is the transition in closing and looking out for their students and faculty and staff. Also, knowing there is a lender out there who has a mortgage on the property, and also, which we learned a little bit in the Mount Ida situation a couple months ago, the Attorney General has a obligation or some jurisdiction. So I think for a lot of reasons we're poised to act in this arena, and certainly encourage the board to do that. I think what we're really talking about is sort of a master plan or some sort of a very comprehensive analysis of the property and getting a lot of information. That's probably something an architectural firm or, a large architectural firm that has different capacities, or some sort of a master planning, urban type of planning group.
So I think, in the short run, I think we'll be coming to the advisory committee for a reserve fund transfer to help us, because we don't have an account where we can just tap into, and this is an unexpected expense. So I think clearly it fits into the category, and we're right now working on a scope of work and trying to figure out how much to ask for. I want to amplify a couple of things that Mr. Kleckner said. One, we have to be sensitive to the fact that this is, it's an institution that has a constituency. Constituency consists of students, staff, faculty, alumni, and we have to respect that, and we also have to respect that there's a process that they're going to have to go through, in addition to processes we have to go through. They are a public charity, and they can't just dispose of assets willy-nilly. Their trustees have a fiduciary obligation in the same way this board has a fiduciary obligation to the town. So these things may not happen quickly. There would be an orderly wind down, I would think, assuming the college continues its current track. And another thing I'd like to amplify, we had a tour of the campus yesterday, and the notion that I've seen on some social media and on the town meeting listserv that we could take over the assets and just immediately open an elementary school on that property. I'd like to put that notion out of everybody's mind. It's college. It's set up very differently. Yes, there are some classrooms. The classrooms are different. There are different facilities. There's no gym, for example. So it's different than a public school. But and also the buildings. For example, the Driscoll School we are designing about 155,000 square foot building. The largest building on the Newbury campus is about 50 or 60,000 square feet, and then the classroom building on Fisher Avenue is about 30,000 square feet. So, the buildings are not the right size, and they're not the right configuration. So, the notion that it can just be a school, an elementary school, just doesn't work. So I guess the message I'd like to send is, yes, we're aware of it. I think we have to analyze this very carefully. We can't make snap judgments on this thing. And we also have to be cognizant of the spending that we've committed to, and the effect on the tax rate. We have a lot of projects in the works, so that has how we pay for this would have to, if there is a this, if there's a there, so to speak. That's something we would have to consider and figure out. Yeah.
I just want to make two brief points, and I agree with everything that the town administrator and the chair have said. First, I just want to say, I know this is a difficult time for the Newberry College community, and sorry to the students who it appears are not going to have a place to go beyond spring of 2019. They're going to have to find a new place to get an education. And sorry to the staff and faculty who, by all indications, are going to be looking for new work. So whatever we do, and I think we should do an investigation, we have to be sensitive and first and foremost be cognizant of the fact that the Newberry College community is going through a transition and winding down. And then second, just to sort of connect dots here, for those who may not be as familiar with the town process, we did get access to some funds on Thursday night to study Baldwin, but those funds are not available for study of Newberry College because they're restricted to study of Baldwin. So when we talk about going to the reserve fund, another avenue of funding, it's required because that's the way that the vote was structured on Thursday night. It was highly restricted and only available for very specific purpose. So just trying to bring everybody on the same page.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Select Person Franco's comments and Chair Wasinski's. And we really have to be mindful of the situation that the students in particular, but also their parents, the staff, alumni, professors are in. And on the one hand, I think, I hope that they work out some arrangement with another educational institution that enables that school to continue in some form providing an education for those students. 600 kids, I mean, we just can't think that their interests are something that should not get in the way of our desires. On the other hand, if the college becomes available, in part or in whole, as something we can purchase, I mean, it's a great opportunity. But I think I want to echo Chair Wasinski's words and expand a little bit by saying it's exciting. It would present an exciting opportunity, but we have to be very, very careful. These are old buildings. If we were to try to use them for school facilities, we have to deal with possible lead paint in the buildings, given their age, asbestos, what type of power plant is there and how fossil fuel free it is not. General environmental issues in that site, we don't know what's there. And even if we were to tear buildings down and put something new up, we don't know what type of conditions we'll have to deal with in that process, given the environmental condition of the buildings and the grounds. So it's an opportunity that we're going to investigate, as Chairman Wyszynski and Mr. Kleckner said. But we're going to go in with our eyes open, not wishing for something that may not be there. And I think, in my opinion, this is not a substitute or reason to pause anything with respect to the three-part plan that we have to solve our school situation here in Brookline. If Newberry College is an opportunity for us, it's an opportunity that is separate from the plan that we have going forward to address these problems.
Let me just say something on that. And I've been thinking about that a lot. It seems to me if we were to pause Baldwin, the design of Baldwin at this point, it would put, and this were not to materialize, or with further study we would find this were not suitable, we will have pushed that school project back a period of time, and with escalation that we're seeing, we've been assuming 8%, the cost of delay is more than the cost of doing the design. So there's more, in my mind, there's more at risk in delay than there is in moving forward in design. So for that reason, I'm in favor of moving forward with design.
Which is what town meeting told us to do.
Right, and then this is a parallel process.
I'll try to. I have laryngitis.
Do you want to
excuse
write
me.
it down and I'll read it?
I'll be brief. I agree with Ms. Frawley that there are many other uses that we could put, if we were able to acquire it, it would take a long time, a lot of investigation, but there are significant other uses that we could have for that property. We do lease many properties around town now. Maybe we could use it for that. There's many, I can't, there's a list. I can't, it's hard for me to enumerate them all right now, but it's important that we study it in that light as well, for the future of the town, and the financial health of the town, because it could end up, if we were able to use it for those things, it could end up being a big money saver, but we don't know that yet, and we have to go in with our eyes open.
Very brief, because we need to move on.
Question. I noticed in the memo that there's reference to a master plan that Stantec did. Have you read that yet? Have you seen it?
Yep.
Can I get a copy of it, please? I think it's important that town meeting members have an idea what Stantec thought was available for it. It should be a public document if you've seen
Yeah,
it.
it's online somewhere, but I'd be happy to get it to you tomorrow.
Well, you know I'm not great online, so thank you very much.
Okay, so that's our update on Newbury. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I guess now we'll get into our normal calendar. We have minutes for December
A few
4th.
comments or a few edits.
Yeah, I have a few edits.
I've given Kate some edits as well.
So I'll move the minutes of December 4th as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller. Selectperson Green. Aye. Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And next item is a question of approving and authorizing town administrator to execute a U.S. EPA notice of violation administrative order on consent pertaining to the Lars Anderson skating rink. Ms. Galantine.
Good evening. As per our earlier executive session, the Town of Brookline Ice Skating Rink had an accidental ammonia release on September 17th, 2017. The rink was closed at the time. There was no property damage, no injuries. The response was efficiently and effectively managed by emergency response personnel, refrigeration contract personnel, and parks and open space personnel. The leak originated from a small hole that occurred due to corrosion. The source and cause of the leak was immediately remedied. From that, the town has taken proactive steps with respect to storage and use of chemicals townwide. And a secondary ammonia detection system was installed and connected to software that provides immediate notification via email and text with any notifications from the system, changes in pressure, ammonia detection in particular. And we can customize who gets what level of notification, and connected to our Lantel building alarm 24/7 system as well. The EPA notice of violation and order on consent agreement documents the ammonia release from the Lars Anderson ice skating rink and identifies the standards that the town must follow to be in compliance with the Clean Air Act pertaining to the use and storage of anhydrous ammonia at the rink, including the process hazard analysis that was completed by the town. There's no penalty associated with this agreement.
Okay. We voted this in executive session, so I don't think there's a need to revote it. I'll just assure the public that this was a very low-scale release. There were no injuries. It was fixed. We've put in systems to better monitor the situation, and hopefully this won't happen again.
Well,
Very good.
It's also an opportunity
Yeah.
for us to make sure that throughout the town, we have in place procedures as well as software, hardware, whatever it takes to ensure that all the chemicals that we work with are carefully and monitored and safe.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Next item is a question of accepting a grant of $49,000 from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection related to the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. Commissioner Papasturgeon, welcome.
Welcome, thank you, good evening. This is our annual grant that we generally receive from the Department of Environmental Protection for, as part of the Sustainable Materials Grant Program. Each community is awarded a grant amount based on the number of points in your system. And I want to very quickly go through that because I think it's important to let the board know how that's achieved. Last year, we received 11 points for our overall sanitation program. At $3,000 a point, it came to $33,000. This year, we were able to receive 14 points. Our points went up. And also the amount went up to $3,500 a point, so we were able to receive $49,000 this year. But just quickly, our hazardous waste program earns us 2 points. Having a dedicated recycling coordinator enforcement officer, which this board approved for us last year, it gives us 3 additional points. Those are the extra that we got this year. A comprehensive private hauler regulation program is 2 points. The new textile program with simple recycling that we rolled out with pay-as-you-throw is 1 point. Yard waste collection program is 2 points. And the big one is pay-as-you-throw. The SMART program gives us 4 points. So this year we were able to receive $49,000, and we're hoping that each year we can ramp that up a few more points each year. It's something that we count on every year to just help offset some of the costs of running all of our waste programs, including hazardous waste collection. So we look forward to it every year.
Okay. Any questions? How are we doing with the recycling contract? There was a thing on 60 Minutes this weekend.
Do you really want to get into that?
I should have warned you.
It's a mess. And actually, I'm preparing a summary report to the board that I will deliver to you in January.
Okay.
That's going to give you a 1 year snapshot of how we're doing on our pay-as-you-throw program. And I also want to talk to you a little bit about the recycling market and how that affects us directly and where we're going with that. So if you can wait a few more weeks, that's in the works right now. It's complicated.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I'll move that we accept the grant in the amount of $49,000 from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection related to the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller. Aye. Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have an extra work order for Babcock Street in the amount of $128,657.74. Mr. Ditto.
Good evening. This change order is basically 3 items of work. The first one is the removal and disposal of unsuitable material. When we started removing the concrete surface, which was about 6 inches thick, we got down to a layer of strictly clay. And if clay gets wet, it's all over. You know, it'll move and it'll settle. So it had to be taken out. And basically, we didn't run into this material until we got down to Freeman Street. But from there on down a couple hundred feet, it was about a foot thick. The only saving grace in this was that we had a disposal site for this material, the transfer station, and that saved us $20 a cubic yard for disposal. Second item of work is a rebuilding of a raised planter on the concrete sidewalk by Bradford Terrace. This is a timbered tree pit that was just had to be torn down and rebuilt. We didn't anticipate doing that work as part of the design, so it came a little bit as a surprise. We also had to do some work with the streetlights. We had to transfer the existing luminaires from existing poles to a new streetlight poles. We had to dispose of the existing poles that were no good, and then we had to furnish and install wiring to connect approximately 29 poles. This change order represents about 5% of the total bid package, which is acceptable in the industry standards. We're about 70% complete on this project, and we fully expect to complete it on time, which is next June 21st, 2019.
Okay, yeah.
I get to drive on the new Babcock Street pretty regularly since I live nearby. Looks great. Much, much better. I'm wondering about the stop sign at the corner of Freeman and Babcock, which is because the bump out of the sidewalk is now set way back. And I'm just worried that there may be people who don't see it because it's not, it's where it used to be, and it was visible to everybody then, but with the sidewalk bumping out, I just don't know.
Right.
So I'm just asking the question of whether there's any plan to change that.
I'll check it tomorrow.
Boy, it's painful hearing you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any update or insight you can give us regarding the bicycle lanes that were part of this project?
Yes, we hadn't planned on putting temporary bike lanes in, particularly because we were too far into the year, and you need to have 50 degrees of temperature rising to make the paint work. So we did do the center lines and an edge line, and that's what we have in place at this point.
So the spring.
Yeah, it will be spring when we have the full line painting done.
Okay. Anything else? On Babcock Street? I don't think I want to hear Babcock Street again.
Yeah.
But it is a major road in town, so I guess we'll hear about it sometime. So I'll move that we approve the extra work order in the amount of $128,657.74 in connection with the reconstruction of Babcock Street project with MDR Construction Company, Inc. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller. Aye. Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Now we have a contract amendment between HMFH Architects and the town in the amount of $35,200 for additional services for geo-environmental engineering work at the Coolidge Corner School. Mr. Quigley.
Good evening. As you mentioned, this is a contract amendment. It related to the the balance of the site work on the project, and these were for services of soil sampling and testing, soil disposal profiles, observation of excavation and off-site disposal, the demo of the old basketball court and assessment of soils underneath for reuse on the site, and also for vibration monitoring services as all that work was going on, there were a lot of issues of concerns from neighbors at the time. So this is basically for the balance of the construction administration services related to the site work at the tail end of the site work part of the project.
Okay. Questions? Comments?
Are we on budget?
Still on budget?
We're on budget.
Okay. So I'll move that we authorize and execute the contract amendment number 22 to the contract between HMFH Architects and the town of Brookline in the amount of $35,200 for additional services for geoenvironmental and engineering work at the Coolidge Corner School. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller. Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we have a lease agreement for some DPW equipment. The annual cost is $269,588.50 for 3 years, for a total of $787.12 Can't leave off those 2 cents.
That's right. The leasing company wanted. David Jankakis, Chief Procurement Officer. This is the annual lease that the Department of Public Works does for, in this case, 6 different pieces of equipment. It is a 3-year lease purchase with the BCI Capital Group. Basically, they are a financing entity. We bid this. There were 8 banks and financing companies that bid. The interest rate that we got this year, 2.79. Not bad considering, the gradual raise in the interest rates that we've seen from the federal government. This is for 3 years. The equipment will be received over the next few months and into the springtime for the DPW operations in the Water and Sewer Department, the Parks Department, and the Highway Division.
I seem to recall last year we were under 2%.
We were, yes. So it's those little hits up in the prime rate do
Right.
affect it. But we got a pretty wide range of rates from this 2.79 all the way up to 5%. So people
Really?
are interested, but we'll have to see what happens in the future.
Wow. Yeah. That's a warning sign.
A little bit. But there's interest, which is something other years we might have had fewer leasing entities. So that's a good thing.
Well, who wants to loan us money at 1-point-something%, Any comments, questions? This is something we've been doing a lot of, so it's something we're familiar with. It's a means of spreading the costs out with a reasonable interest rate. Okay, I'll move that we execute and approve the authorization of a lease purchase with BCI Capital Management Group with an annual cost of $269,588.50, 3 years, for a total of $787,012.02 for equipment for the Department of Public Works, and the equipment includes a Ford Transit camera van, a Wiley sidewalk tractor, a bulk spreader and sander, a Toro lawn tractor, a trackless MT7 tractor, 2 of them, and all of them are brand new 2019 model years. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller. Aye. Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Very much.
And we have a question of approving an amended agreement relating to the Brookline Housing Authority payment in lieu of taxes, and this is an item we dealt with, I believe it was last week, and these are some technical corrections, I am told.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you did approve this program with a proposed resolution, and inadvertently there was a attachment that wasn't fully complete, and out of an abundance of caution, the Housing Authority wants to make sure that you take a revote, including that attachment. I am assured that there's no change whatsoever with the overall program, and I consider it a housekeeping matter.
Okay.
So, I do have a proposed vote that was prepared by the Housing Authorities Council.
Okay. Any questions on this? I'll move in accordance with the discussion and vote taken on November 20th And to clarify the prior vote, the board now reaffirms, approves, and will execute both the December 2018 resolutions regarding cooperation agreements in the state, cooperation agreement between the town of Brookline and the Brookline Housing Authority regarding payments in lieu of taxes dated December 11th. 2018 is contained in the board's packet of materials from the Housing Authority. Well, the lawyer who drafted this really did a good job buttoning every buttonhole. All those in favor? The buttonhole comment doesn't go in the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller. Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And we have a temporary all kinds alcoholic beverage sales license to Boston University for a banquet reception to be held on December 20th at 43 Horse Street from noon to 4 p.m. I will move it.
I will, Mr. Chair, I'd like to attach a condition to this vote, conditional upon police department approval.
Okay. With the police department approval condition, all those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller. Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. Moving on to our calendar. Yeah, we've already dealt with the first item, which was the update of Newberry College. And we have Public Works personnel. You have two pipe layer laborer positions. Mr. Papsturgeon.
Yes, thank you. These two positions are in the Water and Sewer Division. They are entry-level positions. Normally what we do is as we have vacancies occurring in the upper ranks, we try to promote from within. And the end result of that is to fill entry-level positions. These two positions became vacated, one through a termination, and the second through a internal promotion. So we're asking you your approval to go out and advertise for both positions.
Okay. Questions, comments? I'll move that we authorize the filling of two vacancies in the Water Sewer Division, and they are pipe layer laborers. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller. Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. And next item is a question of approving and executing a pilot agreement with Children's Hospital in connection with the property located at 241 Kent Street. Mr.
Good evening,
McCabe.
Gary McCabe for the Board of Assessors. And, I just want to take a minute of your time to ask you to consider approving a renewal of a payment in lieu of tax agreement with Children's Hospital of Boston for a property they own at 241 Kent Street. Now, the quick background is that this was a property that we originally talked to them about in 2007. They agreed to a 10-year pilot at that time. That's been successfully completed, and Children's Hospital approached myself and Gina Franconi, the finance director for the town, and asked if we could collectively negotiate the terms of a new agreement for another 10 years. So we're here to ask you to consider that and hopefully approve that. And with me is Colleen Olson, who's the Senior Director of Real Estate for Children's Hospital Boston, and to introduce herself and to answer any questions you might have. The property is known as the Yockey Family Inn at 241 Kent Street. And Colleen perhaps can tell you about what that's used for.
Okay, sure. Step up to the mic and just introduce yourself for the record.
Good evening, Colleen Olson with Children's Hospital Boston.
Okay.
The Yockey Family Inn has been in service for about 11 years now. It has accommodations for 22 families. It's been running in recent years at about 95% occupancy, which is a pretty strong occupancy rate. I think we only have vacancy when we're in between families and trying to juggle their stays. Families pay a very modest amount to stay there. It's about $30 a night. and it runs at a substantial subsidy. So we have some grants and some generous philanthropy that helps support the house, but any assistance we could get with the taxes would be very much appreciated. We accommodate about 5,600 families per year in the house. 5,600, I'm sorry, room nights per year. So it's very actively used. We turn away probably a third again, that number. So we have the need for more rooms, which is one of the initiatives that the hospital's looking at right now. But there is a great reluctance to increase pricing because when we poll our pediatric peers across the country, we find that this sort of accommodation is either provided for free at most of the leading pediatric hospitals or for a very nominal amount. And nobody provides it for more than $30 a night, interestingly enough. So that is the reason why we looked at this for 10 years. As Mr. McCabe mentioned, we did have a pilot agreement whereby we paid essentially full freight on real estate taxes. We're hoping that we can come to a 10-year agreement and obtain a little bit of relief on that obligation. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions?
I'll just thank Children's. Clearly, there's a long-term relationship between the town and Children's through other avenues, but you've been a good neighbor, clearly do good work, and at 241 Kent Street, obviously, as you articulated, great work being done. So thank you for all that you've done along with your colleagues, and I'm happy to vote for this.
Same here.
Same here.
Okay, so all those in favor of approving and executing a pilot agreement with Children's Hospital in connection with the property located at 241 Kent Street, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller. Aye. Selectperson Green.
Green.
Aye. Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure. And now we have Dr. Jett, who's going to talk about, I'm going to call it the rodent task force, though that's not the word that's going to be up on the screen.
And it's a specific type of rodent that concerns us, right?
3 letters.
Right. Not my daughter's hamster.
Right.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to be brief tonight. First, I want to go ahead and thank the entire team of the Rat Task Force that assisted with this. So this task force was born out of some heartache and pain I've experienced last summer with the numerous amount of calls and emails that I received personally to deal with rats. So I have never dealt with rats before in the community. So this was new for me. Besides growing up in Chicago and watching the big bull rats with saddles on it run across my feet, that's the only time I've seen rats. So needless to say, I want to thank the committee members. So our goal was to pretty much come up with a rat control plan that was across all departments in town and to address the issues in a safe manner. Because I know other communities have attempted such methods, different ideologies, and there was some pushback. So these were our main objectives. And one of them was to have an integrated pest management plan. And if you didn't notice, we actually had a doctor of rotology that was on the task force, which I didn't know existed. His name is Dr. Corgan, and he actually attended a major conference in Florida that had to deal with pest management. And he's one of the gurus in the nation. So we was able to tap into him to actually participate in the task force. We also looked at doing some research, and we conducted a survey among the task force. And then we began to investigate some of the complaints that we received. And we wanted to look at some of the approaches that we had tried, which I would render have been ineffective. So our current scenario, and I would just highlight some of the key points. All construction that happens in town currently does not have an abatement plan to deal with rats. Now, if the health department is alerted, we do make sure that, such as Boston Children's Hospital, that they have a rat abatement plan. But all construction does not. Of course, you've seen the MBTA walls. Most of them are not sealed. A lot of rats in the area, so that's a concern we have to deal with at some point. Our public lands have not been thoroughly walked through to identify rat problems that might exist. And then one of the other big areas is that we have limited staff so that there was some rat issues. My environmentalists work with building inspectors to try to identify. But, you know, even in our own backyard, the Baker School had some issues where some of the cable was eaten up by rats and was reported to the building. So this is the height of our complaints. And 2018, all the data is not in, but I will say, since we require trash receptacles, I could see some of the complaints seem to be reducing in nature. So here's some of the recommendations in your packet, and I'm only gonna, I didn't include all of them, but I'm gonna highlight some of the key ones. We need to begin to look at some of our waste regulations, and that's pertaining to, we still allow people to put out an extra bag of trash the day before, and we probably want to move to 5 a.m. day of trash pickup, and require septical. So that's one of the big areas of concern. Look at our public and private ways that we treat, and probably move toward using what I would call dry ice, but it's actually rat ice, and put it into the barrels to smother the rats when we find them. Because we find that we can't trap everyone, and we have been working aggressively for a number of years to try to work with neighbors, and so sometimes there's dispute on where the rats actually come from, and the neighbors fight among each other, and sometimes if it's, you know, public lands we can deal with, but sometimes we have a lot of issues with private. And then we probably need to really look at having a robust rat program, and actually identify staff that can deal with that, and require that they have pest management training. So one of the other areas too that I didn't include, but it's in your packet, is one of the innovations that Brookline is partaking now to deal with rats. We're the first in the nation to actually have sensors placed around the public health building to track rats. So the hub of the unit is actually in the IT department. And there are sensors that right now are in boxes, and they can track the infrared of a rat going through the box, trying to get food and trap it. So this gives you the platform that we're using to do this. Now this is done by Active Sense. It is not patented yet. So that particular sensor on your left is in the control box. When the rat goes by, the sensor actually pings me. And so right now, not myself, because I haven't downloaded it to my phone yet, but Pat probably is getting a ting, say, hey, somebody needs to go look at a rat. He's eating at the cable wire for the IT department, and the Wi-Fi is about to go out for the town. So that's the technology. And so this is sort of the platform, how it works. We have an installation site. Right now, it's just around the base of the building, but we hope to spread it to other parts of the building, other parts of the town. Once we get a good feel on the traction, we have 18 units that's out. The pilot test will go on for about 3 to 6 months. So once we have data from this unit, so this gives you a little bit of information about the unit. This was us actually setting up the units yesterday. So look code. This is a phone. We actually track it over a barcode. So we download it. So EHS actually has the software as well. So this device will work even in frigid temperatures as today. So that's one of the benefits. And this is sort of the dashboard of what the data would provide us. And so ActiveSense, Dr. Rotologist, I'm just going to call it Dr. Rotologist, and EHS was happy to coordinate actually developing this. And it took us a little bit of time since April to actually bring all groups together. ActiveSense actually flew in from Virginia twice to meet with us. So this is on a patent. So we are the first town, city, municipality in the nation to try this. So this is very innovative. And so within the packet, we have some recommendations. And I know that some of these recommendations definitely have budget implications, but also some policy implications. So one of the first steps now that you have seen the presentation is to work with town administration to see what's the best course of action to move forward. Once we have the data back, which hopefully we'll have it back in 3 to 6 months, just how do we want to proceed and which of these strategies we can use best. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
I know I've given you a lot quickly, so.
So I guess my question is next steps. It sounds like we want to run the pilot program, but there's 5 different recommendations in the packet. To
That's
your
correct.
point, some of them have budget implications.
That's correct.
Some of them are changing regulations or potentially bylaws. Give me a sense about timeline here. What are we looking at in terms of making some of these changes, and when are we going to see a request for some of these expenditures to go into full
So I
effect?
think the first step is to meet with town administration because we definitely want to take a look at the bylaws. So I think ensuring that trash is put out the day of, or a few hours before, would be something that we can do pretty quickly, depending on how the community feels about it. Because that might require people to purchase more receptacles to do that. Probably one of the next steps to actually get a feel for moving forward with dry ice to smother the rats and burrows, because we go out, we try to treat it, but that method is not working around town. Unless we want to bring in feral cats, which Chicago did to some success, but I'm sure this town don't want to do that.
Do they go after turkeys too?
The sensor probably be able to track turkeys, but then what do you do besides?
Well, no, I'm talking about the cats. Do they go after turkey?
No.
I'm sorry, that's a mean thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, we could use plastic bags, put all the rats in and send the frost in there. That would make some people feel great. And then probably the last implication would be, well, how much staff do we actually need to run a program? So I actually have a list of equipment that's needed, and then, a staffing model that it would take. So I roughly said about $200,000. That includes 2 full-time staff and probably about $40,000 for supplies.
Okay.
And that would be maintained over time. And it could be within the Health Department of Public Works. But it does need to, other communities have probably 7 or 8 staff. I think New York actually had people, they had rat patrol. They actually went around to different places and tried rats.
Well, they're a little bigger than we are.
They're a little bit bigger.
I'm not
but
sure
the
how-
rat problem is coming from, well, I won't name
I'm
my
not sure
neighbors.
how effective those are. I've seen rats in New York. So,
Yeah, and we have closed restaurants due to rat infestation. So,
Don't tell me who.
no,
I think
I
the
will not.
idea of having a rodent abatement plan in every single construction project, whether it's a tiny little thing or a big thing or a medium-sized thing, is really important.
That is major. We get a lot of complaints once the construction has started.
Right.
And we find that there's no plan in place. And I actually make some of these visits myself, so I visibly see
Well,
the
the
issue.
question is, maybe the town has to make sure that the building department, the building commission, everybody who's responsible for planning, everybody's responsible for the moving forward of these projects asks about rodent abatement, because otherwise, if we don't require it, it probably won't happen.
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay, any other comments? Thank you, Dr. Jett.
Thank you.
Very
Have a good holiday.
Yeah, you too. Okay. Now we're going to hear about the financial forecast and the preliminary capital improvement program from Ms. Goff, Deputy Town Administrator.
Also Gina Franconi, the Finance Director. So
Okay.
The first presentation will be the both of us, and then we'll have some help from the department head for the CIP. So this is our annual forecast that we present prior to the budget coming out, which essentially, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one.
F5.
Yeah. There we go.
Oh.
Which essentially gives us a projection of the outlook for the next few years for the town, shows some of the items that are projected to be cost items, some revenue projections. So we'll just get started with some of the overall pressure on the town and the schools. The schools are incorporated in this forecast as well. So we're still continuing to see growth in the schools around enrollment, from new teachers. Benefits and collective bargaining are always our annual cost pressure. It's nice to have some certainty around collective bargaining for the next couple of years. That helps us with our planning. We are looking at kind of estimates for the GIC in terms of where we think health insurance is going to be. We'll have a slide coming up that talks about that. I noted that you guys had talked to Andy about the recycling market. And unfortunately, that's a huge cost item for the town in the coming year, around $300,000 cost increase that we're projecting for that. So, and that's on top of an already, we grew it by close to $140,000 this current fiscal year. So,
And that used to be a little bit of a revenue thing.
it's definitely, the model's definitely changed, and I think we're still trying to figure out kind of where the market's going. So,
Right.
So currently, the way that we're projecting, we're looking at a deficit for fiscal 20 on the town side for about $315,000. Excuse me, in the school side, close to $1.4 million. Mary Ellen sits with me and puts her projections into my model, and so we can kind of see the big picture for both town and school. So the school pressures are, special education is always a cost item for them, collective bargaining and enrollment growth. On the town side, collective bargaining, solid waste and recycling, and then pension and OPEB funding. So just some assumptions that we carry forward in the CIP and in the out years. So we are in the first year, fiscal 19 is the first year of the 3-year override funding plan that carries us through fiscal 21. We have some assumptions around new growth. I sit with Kara and Gary on this in the summer. We'll probably do some further refinement, but for now, we've got assumptions for growth around the Circle Cinema site, which is the new hotel at Cleveland Circle, and then some growth related to the 1 and 2 Brookline Place development, which is underway as well. In the out years, we've got a little bit more growth from both those properties, and some assumptions around the hotel that town meeting recently voted the zoning on 25 Washington Street. I've heard it called a few different things. The Garden Inn, 25 Washington Street, Emerald Isle. I'm not really sure what name we'll end up settling on, but that's the site that I'm referring to. So the state had their consensus revenue hearing, I think last week, and they have a number of 3.5% for growth for what we're tagging to unrestricted general government aid. The governor has made a commitment and has been consistent in applying the projected growth at the state level to the UGGA account. For Chapter 70, we're a little bit more conservative. We're assuming about 2.5% growth, and a lot of that is driven by inflation that gets applied to the foundation aid formula. Marijuana, obviously, that's still something that is developing here in Brookline, and we're still trying to be conservative because there's still a lot of uncertainty. We're assuming the $350,000, which is from the prior host agreement. We know that Netta has talked, when they had their licensing with the board, that they were hoping for a January opening. But the disbursement of local option taxes happens quarterly, so if they did open in January, we probably wouldn't get a sense of what a quarter's worth of revenue would be until March. That's not really a lot of information to build a revenue projection on. So I think the thought is that we would look and potentially adjust the budget in November with the November town meeting based on hopefully getting 2 quarters of revenue related to marijuana.
So for the January to March period, we would get revenue.
So
When would that show up?
We would get quarterly payments, so,
Is there a delay?
yeah, there would be a delay, so.
So would it be like a quarter delay, so we wouldn't get it until July, or?
It might be June, it might be.
Okay.
So I think we're just trying to be cautious and not being overly aggressive and then having to downsize the budget as a result.
Is your 300 and, I think you said it was
50.
315.
50.
No, I'm talking about on the previous page, the structural deficit of 315,000.
Yes.
Does that assume that we will include, that include 350,000?
So, yeah, the 350 is currently what we're assuming for revenue related to marijuana.
So the 315 is on top of that?
Correct. For expenditures, right now for group health, we're assuming a rate increase of 5%. I've seen information coming out of the GIC that is in the range between 3 and 7%, so we're kind of right in the middle. So there'll still be a little bit of time to figure out if we need to change those assumptions. We're continuing to grow our assumptions related to additional subscribers on both the town and school side. The pensions, we have some good news. Well, I guess it's good news in that our schedule, our actuarial assessment was just completed, and it didn't significantly change the existing schedule. And we were able to lower the rate of return. And so we've got that built into our forecast as well. So we have a 2% collective bargaining increase, except for 21, where we have a 2.5% increase, which is pretty much what was bargained with the unions. We're assuming continuation of our OPEB funding plan and following our fiscal policies as well.
Can I just dig in on the health insurance
Sure.
for 1 second? I seem to have a vague recollection of a bit of a kerfuffle last year about plan design changes to the GIC. What's going on with that, and is that going to impact the 5% assumed
So the
increase?
3 to 7% is based on continuing the plan design changes as they are right now.
Okay.
So I think it's really still a little too soon to say, whether or not what they get from the market would then result in further tweaks to the design. This is a slide that we always have that has kind of the history of actions that the town has taken in order to right-size the budget. This is a summary of the override funding plan, so you can see that in fiscal 19, which was year 1, we had $2.85 million from the tax levy, non-override funds, which were our GIC savings at the time of $790,000. Year 2, we're relying on an additional $3.3 million of tax capacity. And then in year 3, it's a combination of additional tax capacity and some non-tax-related revenue. So this blizzard of numbers is very hard to read, but essentially provides the background for the projection. So the $315,000 deficit on the town side and the $1.4 million deficit on the school side. And the slides that follow will kind of get into some of the detail behind that. So I'm going to have Gina come and talk a little bit about the town's revenue picture, and then I'll pick it up when we get to the expenditure side as well.
Thank you, Melissa. So starting off here with revenue, this chart, the pie chart, shows just the breakdown of the different types of revenue that the town raises or collects. 78% of the revenues are raised through property taxes, and we can go through the different allocations as we move forward. For FY20, the budget is projected to go up 5.3% over FY19, and that will mainly be in property taxes. So here is the 5.3% that the budget is going up. Again, it's mainly through property taxes. Local receipts is going up minimally. This really is, we've bumped up the excise tax numbers here. State aid is staying flat. Other available, this is going down. Parking fund revenues were used for one-time uses for street and sidewalk repairs. And free cash is, after it's certified, it goes through the town's policy, and we'll walk through that in just a moment. Property taxes. So this is what drives the budget, and we have the 2.5% that's allowed, plus new growth, which really is Children's Hospital at 2 Brookline Place, and the AC Marriott Hotel over in Cleveland Circle this year. And then the next item says general override, but underneath in the red, the excess capacity, those two are netting out because it's the 3-year override there. And debt exclusion is at $3.4 million, and this is for the high school and the Coolidge Corner School, and that is it. So in those out years, we're only talking Coolidge Corner and high school. The increases here are 6.2% and 6.7%. For 2020. We went through a couple of weeks ago the whole setting of the tax rate and tax classification, and so those tax bills, actually, we ran them today and they're off to the printer, and so those will be going out in the mail next week. So.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Single-family home owners will, they should anticipate an increase of 6.1% on their tax from last year, and condo owners 2.6%.
The out year, go back. Actually, I think the next slide is going to answer my question.
Okay.
Okay.
So here is how the debt exclusion was calculated. And again, it has the high school and Coolidge Corner not listed. Is Pierce, Driscoll, and Baldwin.
Right. That was going to be my question.
So we are really ramping up here.
So I'll just point out the delta, the difference between 2019 and what we're projecting 5 years from now. It's a factor of, what, 4? Before we even get into
the new projects. So just to put in a little bit of context, if we took a $100 million bond project and we bonded it over 25 years, the principal on that is $4 million. And in those beginning, 5-6 years, the interest on that is about $2 million. It decreases, but just to kind of give you a flavor for what that will look like.
Right. I've been thinking kind of a rule of thumb as I've been thinking about the new projects. For every 100 million, we're looking at about a figure 3.5% increase in taxes in year one.
I think you're using a good estimate. Yep.
Yeah.
Here is state aid. Melissa, she talked about how the unrestricted general government and the school aid were calculated, or our assumptions, pretty much 2% at the end of the day. Very conservative, so it's going to take January and February for the legislature to start moving on their budget, and so we'll have better numbers as the months progress. Local receipts, so here motor vehicle excise, the hotel occupancy, meals taxes are there. Licenses and permits really are driven by fire permits and liquor licenses, the parking fines, general government, that includes building permits, within that category. Interest income is interest from our investments and the money we collect from delinquent taxes, our pilot programs that we have with the nonprofits throughout town, refuse, the disposal of refuse, and departmental and other. That has the $5 million of parking meters. That's the biggest one in there, but also included in there is the host agreement, the cable franchise fee, so things like that are in departmental and other.
Can I ask, going forward, that you separate out marijuana and show that on a separate line?
We can do that. It will be interesting to watch
Yeah.
how this all unfolds and the finances that go around it.
Can I ask a question? Going back to slide 11, you show total state aid of 2.1% in fiscal year 2020, but on slide 8, you have state aid at 0. What's the difference?
I think it's just the mathematical calculation.
2.1% so low that it's almost close to 0?
Yeah, pretty much.
I
Just
made
the
that note,
dollar.
too. I was going to check out that, too.
But I can recheck the calculation, but it is very minor.
Well, I mean, 800,000 is minor too, but you have that in local receipts. 400,000 is equal to state aid. So
we'll check that out.
Yeah.
On slide 7, which was the pie chart, I'm assuming there's no, in the local receipts, there's no marijuana.
No, in local receipts, there is no marijuana. Right, the 350, but nothing new. There isn't anything for recreational marijuana, but the 350 from the medicinal is in there.
Okay. So, in truth, this pie chart could be very different next year when we have a better idea of what our receipts from the recreation.
That's correct, yep. And we'll have a better idea in the spring once we see what those payments are going to look like.
Okay.
And I would assume that we could make adjustments in November.
Are you assuming revenue from the Uber Lyft?
Yes.
Are we building that in?
You'll find that in the CIP. So
Okay, thank you.
Other available funds, this money is coming from other funds throughout the town to help support the payment of fringe benefits, mainly around golf, recreation, and water and sewer. And free cash, it was certified at $11.9 million, which is fantastic. It was 11.1 last year. And so the town's policy in this chart below dictates how it will be spent. So 25% to the reserve, so that's $670. Then the fund balance gets $2.6 million. The liability reserve is 1% of the prior year net revenue at $390,000. Capital improvements to get it up to 7.5% is around $4 million. The Affordable Housing Trust is at $5 million, so it does not require funding, which leaves $4.2 million for special use or one-time items is really how the town spends the rest of it under item 6 for special uses. So an additional 2.7 to the CIP, 600,000 to OPEB. This is consistent with prior year spending, $200,000 for the Driscoll schematic design, which is also supported mainly by 1.3 from the overlay account, pensions, 300,000, replenishing the workers' comp trust fund at 200, and replenishing affordable housing at $200,000.
That's this year's allocation, or for the coming year? Okay. So out of the free cash of 11.9, we're looking at 4 million, it's item 4 for the CIP, plus special use 2.7 million. So we're at we're looking at 6.7 million towards CIP. How does that compare with some of our recent years?
Yeah. So it's pretty similar to last year. I would say that the past couple of years, we've been conservative around our estimate for building permits, given that, the Brookline Place building permits were quite substantial, but those are one-time in nature.
Right.
So that's really boosted our level of free cash, and we don't estimate that that would be something that would continue going forward.
Right. So this 11.9 has been bolstered a bit by the Brookline Place.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is the fund balance, the history of the fund balance. For FY18, we reached 12.1%. We are a AAA-rated community, and we are expected to maintain a fund balance of 10% of our revenues, so we are right where we're supposed to be. So that 2.6 really is critical for the town to keep allocating it so that we can stay above the 10%. And now it's time to turn to expenditures. So Melissa is going to walk you through that. Thank you very much.
So this slide here is just a picture of our general fund budget. So you can see that the combination of personnel and benefits, most of the money in the general fund is allocated towards personnel. This slide here is what we show annually in our budget, which essentially tries to capture what percentage of the budget is dedicated to education and other related town services. It essentially takes an exercise that we do over the summer where we get reporting from departments on school-related expenses and extrapolates that into the following year's budget. So these are the categories of growth for the expenditures, and so obviously collective bargaining is one of the top categories, benefits being close second. We have growth related to our CIP, we have growth town departmental expenditures, and growth on the school side as well.
Melissa, could you go back to that? So collective bargaining is when you say town-wide, does that include schools?
Town and schools, yes.
Yes, that's what I thought. Yeah.
So on the town side, it's purely just the COLAs, but on the school side, it's also steps and lanes and their COLAs as well.
So I noticed the non-appropriated funds are going down a little. Does that mean our Norfolk County assessment is going down?
Unfortunately, no. The adjustment in non-appropriated is actually related to the one-time deficit that we had to resolve at town meeting related to the year-end position in the school department. So that kind of skews the numbers a little bit.
Okay.
This is a snapshot of our benefit budget. So group health and pension being the top two categories of expenditures. Also recommending an increase in the workers' compensation fund. In addition to adding free cash to support the fund, we've seen a drop in the fund balance. Would like to bolster that a little bit, feel a little bit comfortable taking the allocation that's currently in the public safety IOD that has a pretty healthy fund balance, dedicating that to workers' comp for about a year or two, and I think we'll be able to do that without a negative impact on the rest of the budget. So this is just a summary of our major accounts. So we already talked about the assumptions around health insurance, the 5% rate increase. For pensions, our schedule has been set, so we know for the next 2 years what our numbers are going to be. Still recommending additional allocation of free cash, knowing that the market this year probably is great, hoping that any additional free cash will kind of buffer us from any major changes in the market. And then OPEBs, we're recommending $4.9 million. So this is a picture of how our group health allocation has changed. over the years. So you can see the drop around fiscal 10 to 11. That was the year that we joined the GIC, but we've steadily been growing, maybe not as dramatically as we had experienced prior to the GIC, but it's still a pretty substantial growth over the years. So this is a snapshot of our OPEB funding plan. So we grow our operating revenue dedicated to the OPEB trust by $250,000 annually. We also add to that free cash, any runoff from non-contribute retirements, and then also if we have special funds that are able to provide support. So we have payments from the golf course, from the water and sewer enterprise. I've been talking with Mary Ellen a little bit about the school allocation around this $338,000 number. That potentially will need to get revised downward. There are some revolving funds that provided support to OPEBs that it's no longer sustainable, given that they are requiring a subsidy in order to not have a deficit position. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that. That will likely be revised downward. So this is the current snapshot of our funding plan, so you can see how operating revenue combined with free cash, combined with other revenue sources, really does help bolster the funding and provides a pretty good plan to present when we're talking about this with Moody's or any other ratings agency. This shows our pension funding schedule, and so this is really kind of the slide that shows that in 2030, when we are reaching full funding, we potentially could dedicate the funding that we used to dedicate to pension to OPEB to help get our OPEB funding on a better path as well. So you can see that we're currently a funding date of 2030, which hasn't changed. That was where we were prior to, and we were able to reduce our rate of return from 7.4 to 7.2%. This slide just shows how much if you combine both pension and group health and apply that number to our levy, how much of the levy just those two cost items assume. So it's pretty substantial. This slide just summarizes the CIP, which will be our next presentation. Essentially, we are following our fiscal policies. Our 6% policy essentially looks for operating revenue the target is 6% of prior year net revenue. Some of the projects we'll be talking about as we go into the next presentation: Harry Downs Field, Lars Anderson Park. We're looking at the high school project, the Pierce School project, which was late breaking on Wednesday, so quick scurry to get that into the plan. Skyline Park is another major project that also is here as well. So I can take questions now, or if you're ready to jump into the CIP, we can do that, however you want to go next.
Have you, interest rates are going up. Have we included that in our revenue forecast? It's probably a minor item.
So I check my, the interest numbers that I assume, I check with Gina to make sure she's comfortable. We actually increase the budget around investment revenue, and that, so I feel like we've kind of already bolstered it a little bit. Okay. So we're comfortable with where the estimate is currently.
Okay. Clearly, you've baked rising interest rates into the debt financing plan.
So what I do is every year I check the interest rate assumptions with our financial advisor to make sure that I'm still being conservative enough, and he's comfortable with the numbers that we're assuming in the plan. Okay, if you're ready, I'll jump into the CIP.
Sure. Why not?
So our capital improvement plan covers fiscal 20 through fiscal 2025. This is just a statement about the importance of capital planning and budgeting from the ICMA's Guide to Capital Budgeting. So we have a 6-year, $266 million CIP. A lot of things happened probably the last week, right before this came out. So we've tried to rejigger and adjust as these changes came out. So we've got, based on the outcome of town meeting, we have the schematic design for both Driscoll and Baldwin that has been funded. Currently in the plan, I am using estimates that were presented to the building committees I know there were ranges presented to the building committees. Right now, I'm just picking a number. We'll get a refined number as we go into schematic design. Once we have that refined number, we can then get a cash flow estimate, which will then help inform the debt service schedule. So currently, I'm assuming $100 million for Driscoll, and I'm assuming $82 million for the Baldwin School project. And both of those are assumed to be funded with a debt exclusion. Late-breaking Pierce News was able to add $2 million for schematic design and feasibility. With the MSBA, you do both of those phases of the project in one appropriation. So given that there really wasn't a lot of capacity to fund $2 million within the CIP without dramatically cutting a lot of projects, we're assuming that we're going to go for bond authorization related to Pierce. And then also beyond the schematic design phase, it's assumed that a debt exclusion would cover that as well. So we have $9.8 million in classroom capacity, which is primarily for the rentals and leases that the school department has for administrative staff, and then also for their early education programs as well. And so even though we have a lot of very large school projects coming online in the CIP, we're still able to provide a lot of departmental support for some other initiatives in here as well. So we have the Baldwin School. We talked about the $2 million around, that should actually say Pierce School, so sorry about that. I'll edit that before we post it online. Radio infrastructure, so both police and fire radio system network has to be completely overhauled, and we have the police chief here tonight with his director of IT. If you have any questions about that project, it's a pretty substantial project that we're able to fit within the CIP. Lars Anderson, that has been marching along in the CIP, funding every couple of years or so. So we've got $13.4 million for Lars Anderson. Skyline Park is another project that you'll see in fiscal 25. We've got some fire station renovation projects, which also have been kind of progressing their way through the CIP. And we also have some public building fire alarm upgrades and fire engine replacements as well. Excuse me. So we also have kind of continued programs within the CIP. We have our tree program, we have our streets and sidewalk program, our roof and masonry program. Those continue to march along in the CIP and get consistent support as well. This slide here shows, it's very hard to read.
There's another blizzard of numbers.
It's another blizzard of numbers, but essentially what it, and this will all be online so you can, really hone in on it. It shows all the school related projects within the CIP. So just schools alone, it's $211 million. A lot of that is the major school projects, which are assumed to be debt exclusions, but then we do have the elevator repairs, the roof and masonry program as well, school related. And once I'm done kind of running through these slides, all the department heads are here, and they would love to take your questions about any specific project that you're interested in.
I'm sure they're sitting on the edges of their seats waiting.
I've got a question about Pierce. It looks like the only money that is held in the CIP is the $2 million for feasibility and schematic design.
Yes.
So unlike the high school where there was a placeholder, there's nothing in the CIP. It's entirely going to be financed through the...
Same with Baldwin and Driscoll.
With the high school project at the time, there was an intentional decision to reduce the reliance on the debt exclusion. So $35 million was kind of put in as a placeholder for debt service associated with the high school. At this point, if you would want to do that for another school project, other projects would need to get cut within the CIP. Okay. So we have our park projects as well, $14.7 million over the 6 years of the plan. Amory Park is a new park that's, well, it's not a new park, it's a new project that shows up in fiscal 25.
Not a new park.
Correct. We've got the Skyline Park, which I referenced earlier. We have a lot of work at Lars coming online. Robinson Playground is coming online for design. So we've got a lot of interesting park projects that will also be very good as well. So public safety, we have our rehab and replacement plan, We talked with the chief. So the Quint was originally scheduled for refurbishment in fiscal '20. He would like a little bit more time before we decide to refurbish the Quint. So he's comfortable if we defer it a year or two, fiscal '22, in order to be able to assess whether or not we're going to be sticking with the Quint or whether or not we'll have another recommendation. And then in addition, we are currently undergoing a study around fire station renovations and some industrial cleaning that's been starting to appear in other fire departments, like in Boston, around trying to get rid of some of the contaminants in the station. So that's something that we've been engaged with the building department and the fire department on. Really want to be careful and really have a plan and a study that helps guide future funding for that kind of request. This is our DPW-centric slide here. So you can see the TNC money that you were looking for earlier, Neil. You'll see that under transportation. So we're assuming we got $207,000 this past fall. We're assuming that same level of support. And because of the timing of when the funds actually are received, it likely will still be on that cycle of having a November appropriation as opposed to the May town meeting.
Yeah, I think this time, though, we should anticipate it, at least engage in some process to perhaps a little more carefully think about what we want to do with the money.
Yeah, we acknowledge that, and I think that, the time constraints from, funding decision to appropriation were very tight, but now that we kind of have a sense of what we think the funding will be, we're confident that we'll have a plan that will, show some prioritization for those funds. Street rehab, last year we were able to use $1.4 million from the parking meter fund to help boost that account. We still have a little bit of a balance in the parking meter fund. I'm not recommending appropriation at this point because there's still some movement around the Gateway East project, which is about to enter the construction phase, and want to make sure that there's no uncertainty around the town's obligation around that project before relinquishing the rest of the balance in the parking meter fund. Then we also have some water system improvement projects and some additional improvements at Netherlands Road. So this slide here just shows us of the town's CIP funding policy. So we first start off with 6% of prior year net revenue. On top of that, we add free cash, and the target with free cash is to get to 7.5% of prior year net revenue. Within that 6% policy, we have a goal of trying to get our debt finance piece at 4.5% and then our tax finance piece at 1.5%. This is how our revenue finance piece actually shakes out. We've got $9.9 million in revenue between tax, the 6% piece and the free cash piece. So you can see we've got $3 million from tax finance CIP and $6.7 million coming from free cash, which we had talked about when we saw that free cash slide. So for debt service, we have $21 million in debt service. 13.1 is coming from the general fund, not related to a debt exclusion, and 6.3 is coming from the debt exclusion. And then we have an additional 1.6 coming from our enterprise fund. So that's water and sewer and golf. This slide, we talked about free cash, and so the waterfall, if you will, which essentially there are town liabilities that need to be addressed before then revisiting any one-time cost items that would be good for free cash as well. This is just another illustration of how the 6% policy works. So you can see that with our goal of 4.5 and 1.5, we're at 4.87 in fiscal 20 and 1.3 in pay-as-you-go CIP. This slide here just shows the funding source per year for the CIP. So you can see that a majority of the CIP is assumed to be debt exclusion. So it's specifically the $100 million Driscoll School project and the $82 million Baldwin School project. This slide here just shows what type of expense, whether it be a new facility, a renovation, a park, if there was a fire vehicle, that would also be in there as well. This slide here is our debt management plan, so you can see what our plan is for all the projects that have been approved or that we're anticipating coming to town meeting in the coming years for approval, the amount that we're looking for, the term of the bond, and then the estimate for debt service. And this is the debt exclusion specific piece around that as well. So this slide here just shows that as our debt is running off, which is the blue, we're backfilling with additional projects. And then the same type of thing with as the old debt exclusion is going away, we have the new debt exclusion that's commencing as well. This is another illustration of the 6% policy. And this slide here kind of illustrates that as you take on more debt, how tight it really does get within the 6%. So you can see that fiscal 23 is a year that there really isn't a lot of revenue finance CIP. We're going to be heavily reliant on free cash that year, and this is the year that the $35 million for the high school comes online. So you can kind of see the impact of a large debt service payment like that. So that is the end of my presentation, but all the department heads are here if you want to question any specific project.
Okay. Well, since Melissa highlighted the radio infrastructure, and we haven't really heard about that, so I'll turn to the chief, Mr. Wilder. So what's that all about?
So our radio infrastructure for both Police Channel 1, Fire Channel 1, and Police Channel 2 is beyond its life service. It's well beyond. It hasn't been upgraded for the last 20 to 25 years. Police Channel 2 was built out 13 years ago, and the typical lifespan for that radio equipment is 7 to 10 years. And realistically, the systems are good for 12 to 15 years. So it's it's a primary function of what we do. And Scott can explain to you a little bit about why we've gotten to this position. There's been some talk about banding and selling off radio frequencies that through Congress that hasn't come to fruition, so we've kind of been on hold in updating these systems, and now it looks like we need to move ahead, or else we're going to put ourselves in a bad position.
Okay. So I see there's $900,000 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's page isn't numbered. Does that it's going to be enough to spread it out over 5 years?
Yes, so the project will be done all at once, but we'll be paying for it over a period of time.
So we'll be lease financing the cost of the project, similar to the way that we do our DPW.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Any other questions on that? Or question for the chief?
No.
For the chief while we have him?
No.
Okay, you're done.
Thank you.
Unless the chief has water fountains in the station that's we can use.
Fire alarm call box. Who's going to take that one? $1,000,001.
As you know, Public Works maintains the fire alarm call box system. These are the public boxes that are along the roadways, and we also have 42 public master boxes that are generally located in facilities. The system is incredibly ancient. It's a hardwired underground system that's in conduit. It's a bear to maintain, to say the least. We've been having many problems with it over the years, so we recommended a CIP project a few years ago. But leading up to that project, we brought in a consultant engineer to study the entire system, to do an inventory, a condition report, and also analyze the data through dispatch to see how many times these things have been pulled. In the era of cell phone technology, you can imagine that very few people are pulling a call box on the street these days. Generally, they're using their cell phone to call in an emergency. So just a few statistics. The information gathered from Central Dispatch revealed that only 239 polls were recorded over a 10-year period.
Over a 10-year period?
Over a 10-year period. And those were from 130 boxes. We have 297 street boxes. Only 130 of those boxes were pulled over that 10-year period, and it amounted to only 239 pulls. The other 167 boxes in the system were never pulled at all over that same 10-year period. So we took a look at some of the options as to how much it would cost to repair the current hardwire system as it is. That came to about $3.8 million, not the preferred option. Our original proposal was to replace 162 of the 297 boxes with the latest technology, which is now wireless technology. It allows us to abandon the hardwired system completely. And the third was to replace all 297 street boxes and master boxes with a wireless system. That would have cost about $4.1 million. After further discussions with the fire department through the chief, the fire department took another hard look at the actual poles and their locations and determined that we really didn't need to maintain or to replace 162 boxes. We could probably provide effective coverage townwide through the replacement of only 80 of the 297 boxes at strategic locations, and all the 42 master boxes as well. So what was originally a $2.4 million project recommended for the TIP has now come down to about a $1.1 million project, which we feel that we can do it in 1 year. That will effectively allow us to abandon the existing hardwired system, go totally with wireless control, put in new master boxes in locations where the fire department deems that they'd be the most effective, replace all 42 of the public master boxes in our facilities, and get it all done within a 1 year period. So basically, that's the project.
So many municipalities have abandoned, at least public, the street boxes. I know I go down to Washington, D.C. every now and then, and they've turned many of their boxes into art displays that you see on the street. Sometimes I'll come back with a picture. So I guess if I know it's a source of comfort, but do we really need it? And I know Fire Chief, I've asked this question for the last 20 years that I've been involved in town government, and the Fire Chief always defends it, so go to it, Chief Sullivan.
Well, the relationship between the town and the area, in the general Boston area, and the street boxes is historic. And, we looked at all of the options, and what we came down to was that we looked at the placement in places that were more accessible to the public, Brookline Village, Coolidge Corner, and then in and around all of the parks that the town maintains. With the idea that, if folks are out and they're using the public facilities, they may or may not have a cell phone available to them. And so we feel very comfortable that the 80 ADA compliant solar powered street boxes would do the trick. There is one other component to this whole idea that is integrated that needs to be talked about, and that is the fact that we have over 100 subscribers to master boxes that are not public buildings that are also on this wired system. So we can't just abandon the wired system because we have all of these other folks who are paying, to have the service to us. So the first part of this plan was to get the folks who are out there on the master boxes to switch over and convert to wireless at a cost to them. And it's not an unsubstantial cost. So with the billing cycle for the master boxes this year, we put in a 2-year phase-in plan for those boxes to be converted over to wireless boxes. As a result of that, we are committed to doing the public buildings to wireless boxes, and so that we would, in support of those that we were asking to do so. They have the option to either go to a wireless box or go to a central station service. So that's the back-end piece that we can't forget and just say, you know, we can just abandon all the street boxes. That's not going to solve the bigger problem. The bigger problem is the infrastructure that also supports many of these large buildings, large life safety issues. That's my biggest concern, is to get them off of those wired systems as soon as we possibly can, and then the street boxes can go, you know, through that transition to this wireless and much further scaled down version of it, and still maintain the aesthetic value that we get from, you know, this area of the country. I still think they have a purpose. I still think they serve a need in the community. Certainly not to the extent that they did in the past, and we've really taken them out of all of the areas that are, you know, would not lend themselves, you know, Woodland Street and Tom Brady's not running down the driveway to pull the master box on the street corner, so you know that's kind of a no-brainer. But around the schools, around the T stations, all of the places where you would expect that there would be congregations of people, that's where we decided to keep the ADA compliant.
Do the new boxes, the wireless, allow for voice communication?
No, it's simply you simply
Just,
hit the
hit
button, and it comes in as a location, and then we would send resources to it, to that area. So.
Yeah.
Do we have any data on who uses the boxes? I mean, I understand they're not very well used, but
Not specifically on who uses the boxes.
I'm talking about age mostly. So I'm wondering whether it's
No.
preponderance of children or elderly.
Not specifically, no.
Do you have any data on the types of fires that are pulled in those 137 over 10 years or whatever the number was? I mean, there weren't that many more fires over that time, I
A
assume.
lot of the calls we get from the street boxes are for medical aid, medical assistance, more so than actual fire calls. So it's really a public safety. It's called a firebox, but it's really a public safety way to get a hold of your public safety agency to get some response. You know, if you're having a heart attack, if you know someone's on the playground and they get a bee sting, and you know the kids are playing and their friend gets a bee sting, and there's no EpiPen available, they can go straight to the corner, hit the alarm box to the fire department, and we're going to have resources there within the first 4 to 6 minutes, and identify whatever the problem is on that end.
So this $1.1 million cost is really a fraction of the overall cost of the project, because some of the central alarms buildings are picking up some portion of the real cost of the conversion. Is that sort of an accurate way to think about it?
The total cost for any of the subscribers goes to them.
Yeah.
The only infrastructure cost that we are committed to is to change over a piece of equipment at the fire alarm, the communications dispatch, for about $68,000. Yeah. That's in there to be able to receive the wireless communications. Right now, they can receive the wireless communications, but it is not digitized to the fire alarm dispatch panel, so they physically have to go up, tear a paper, see what it says, and then kind of translate that into a call. The new box would be able to translate directly into an electronic version in front of the dispatcher, and they would immediately dispatch the call.
So if there's a call on the border of town, let's just think Harvard Street, right on the border between Brookline and Alston, is the local box still going to be struck? How does the Brookline conversion relate to the Boston continued wire system,
Yeah,
where I know there's a
it's-
little bit of overlap sometimes.
It would still, it comes in as an area, so it will still come in with the same responses it would always get. You know, for a pole on a box on the street, it's a single company goes and checks it out. That's, you know, so that's still going to stay the same.
Any other questions for the chief while we have him? Okay, thank you.
I have a question about parks. if you
Okay,
don't mind.
Parks is our next victim.
And it's my usual question, so. So in the numbers for the various parks, I assume that also includes installation of water fountains and in addition to the comfort stations, right? Could you give me some sense of how that's going?
Oh, it absolutely. So every park renovation that we do currently includes replacement of sort of the traditional drinking water fountains with our new accessible fountains that provide the bottle refill station. And I actually updated all the descriptions last year to explicitly state that we were installing those with each of the renovations, and they've been very well received.
When do you get to Griggs Park?
Griggs is, Griggs is about 6 years away.
Yeah.
We might be able to get to the drinking fountain a little bit earlier, though. In some locations, we've also added the little doggy drinking bowl, and that would be a park where that would be appropriate.
Thank you.
So I see we have 2 expenditures for Robinson Playground. Is this a full rehab that we're gearing up for?
This is a full rehab, so you'll see in this upcoming fiscal year, there is money available for our design development, design review process, sort of full outreach and work with the neighborhood to develop the concept. And then it will be a full renovation, new play equipment. There's a lot of work to do at Robinson on accessibility and paths and movement through the park. That'll be included. We will install new water play, renovate the field, all the fencing, new planting, and probably have robust conversation about the hard court space there and what the future use should be.
That's kind of a wasted space currently.
It's a funny space, but there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting in that neighborhood, well, it's our neighborhood, just thinking Clark was done a few years ago, Robinson and Downs is also, it's slated to be done,
This coming year.
Wow.
Yes.
So I guess 20 years ago, we were in the same cycle.
That's
so it's
probably true.
It's been 20 years, pretty amazing. Yeah.
I noticed that Cypress Field is listed on here for this year, which we're currently in, $240,000. Are we spending that money this year?
So that's just the design piece, which was funded separately. So the construction piece is sitting in the budget for the high school.
Okay. So, but are you spending that 240 in this fiscal year?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We had our kickoff meeting, as you know, for Cypress last week.
Okay, anything else for Ms. Galantine?
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Just a question for Ms. Slyman at the library. Don't fall asleep on us. Just so just tell us, you had a successful opening at the Coolidge Corner. Tell us how it's going at Coolidge Corner.
Sure. So Sarah Slyman, Library Director. We've been open at Coolidge Corner since Sunday, December 2nd. We had 1,026 people come to the opening.
Wow.
So, the poor caterer, really, we didn't pay her for that many people. So it was a really tremendous success. We've had, to my knowledge, no complaints. It's been incredible. Well, one complaint about the computers, but people are just uniformly excited and pleased with how it looks and how it's working. And so thanks to all of you for advocating for the project, and of course to the advisory committee and town meeting for funding it, and the foundation and the trustees and the friends. There were a lot of hands on the project. The buildings department was spectacular, and the contractor we worked with was amazing. It's the best contractor I've ever worked with. So overall, it was a really pleasant experience with a really positive result. So I have no complaints, and I thank all of you that were able to come on Sunday. And for those of you who weren't able to, just if you'd like a tour, please let me know. I'm happy to give you one.
Okay. So I don't see any projects in here for you.
There's 3 in there.
3?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about them.
So I'll just lead with the big one. We're going to need to renovate the main library. It's sad. So believe it or not, next year it will be 20 years since we shut the doors over at the main library to renovate it last time. We, I believe, have it in the out years at 22 through 26 to 28. Yeah, future years. So we're anticipating a similar funding model. They do, the MBLC offers a little bit higher percentage. I conservatively estimated at 30, but they do sometimes go up to 50. Brookline is, as we all know, a well-to-do community, so they tend to go to 50 for communities that can't afford it. So we might not hit 50, but and we're letting the foundation rest after their very generous donations to the renovation, but they do know that there's a huge capital fundraising project coming in their future, and I will be asking the town also for substantial investment in that. There's a dramatically long list of things that we need to have that considered a modern functioning library.
Okay. Well, it's something to, another big project to look forward to.
Yeah, taking 19 funded project though, so if anybody wants to go to lunch or, start a small project with me, that'd be great. And we are looking to add an automated materials handler. I've talked to you all about these before. While we were very ahead of the curve and innovative, first library in Massachusetts to have RFID technology, there was no plan built in for maintenance, routine replacement, refurbishment of those materials. So a lot of them are 10 years old. We have used existing budget money through some streamlining that we did, money that we found, things that were being paid for that we no longer used from prior to my time here. And so we were able to replace on the library's dime a lot of our RFID pads, all of our gates. None of our gates were working. We had inaccurate attendance figures for 3 years, which we talk a lot about with the advisory committee. But now, thanks to the hard work of our assistant director for technology, Callan Vignoli, they all are brand new. They work really well, and our attendance is going crazy, which is great. But our workload has changed dramatically since 10 years ago, the implementation of RFID technology. The expectation of the public for our hands-on help, while it has moved away from what we would consider traditional reference interviews and reference services, we are working harder than ever in the technology arena, as well as working with our Library of Things. And people have much higher expectations of programming from libraries than they used to. Libraries have become a real third space for folks away from home and work, where they can get their recreation affordably, cultural entertainment, education. We're offering now, thankfully, finally, one-on-one technology classes by appointment. We also have drop-in technology. We have lunch and learn programming. So we're teaching classes. We just added new ELL, certified ELL instruction for folks that need to learn English. We're going to be adding career counseling sessions as well as resume workshops. So those are all things that we didn't do before. So I really need to appreciate some time savings somewhere for my staff so that they can meet those needs. We lend, for example, Rokus, and people really want to use them, but most people don't know how to use them unless they own them already, and then they don't need us. So they have to come in and be trained, and We do a lot of training in-house also to use all of our awesome new facilities for when people do their own programs. So what would be a nice start is to start with the least expensive automated materials handler at our smallest little branch out in beautiful South Brookline. The South Brookline populace often feels like they get everything last, so that would be another advantage, I think, is to let them see that we care just as much about them as we do about all our other locations, and we're going to give them this cool thing that we need first. So it would be located near the front of the building, and people would return their items and they would be automatically sorted for reshelving, thereby freeing up valuable staff time for one-on-one customer service, patron-oriented servicing. So that, I believe, is in around $200,000.
Okay.
And the last one is, I've been working closely with the buildings department, talking about this. We're looking to provide some gender-neutral bathrooms at the Brookline Village location. We are fortunate in the way that Putterham and Coolidge Corner libraries were built, that we are able to offer that almost entirely through both of those locations. But as far as the main library, only the staff bathrooms and one bathroom which is located in admin, which locks at 4 p.m. every day. So it's not really accessible to the public. Quite a lot of the hours that we're open till 9 almost every night, are really inclusive. So it's a safety issue for folks. You know, people need to have safe places to use the restroom. And I really believe that it's time we renovate a couple of bathrooms over there. Charlie says that we can do it from a capacity standpoint. The plumbing code hasn't quite caught up to this movement, but he thinks that we can swing it.
Sure.
We've taken a walk around the building and identified the bathrooms, and so we're pretty excited to move that forward.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And now I'll look at either Mr. Ditto or Mr. Corain. So you're not getting off scot-free. So two items that every year are topics of conversation, I know, with our friends on advisory and generally at town meeting, and that's traffic calming and bicycle improvements. But I notice the traffic calming is way up and the bicycle improvements are way down. So what's happening?
Todd Crane, Train Station Administrator for the town. It's just a matter of what the projects are that we advanced and had a vote from the respective Transportation Board, but also their various advisory committees. So the traffic calming project for this year, or this upcoming year, is the Woodland Road Traffic Calming Project. It's been making its way through the process with the Transportation Board.
Is that going to be affected by what's happening at Baldwin?
No, it's an independent project. It's not affected by the Baldwin.
But it seems to me if Baldwin slows down, shouldn't we consider whether or not to improve that road?
Well, this is based on current conditions, so it warranted traffic calming on its own, independent of the school. People have asked in terms of, is it driven by the school? It's not driven by the school, but it's will certainly help and benefit if and when the school is built at that location. It's addressing current safety deficiencies on the entire length of Woodland Road, both the two-way section by Beaver Country Day as well as the one-way section by Pine Manor. It includes, it includes intersection tightenings on Woodland Road at Laurel Road, intersection realignment on Woodland Road at the intersection of Heath Street on the Pine Manor side. You remember previously, a couple years ago, we had already tightened the intersection of Woodland Road and Heath Street on the Hammond Pond Parkway side. It includes a new crosswalk with rectangular rapid flash beacons on Heath Street at Woodland Road, 3 raised speed humps on Woodland Road, the Pine Manor side, a 20-mile-per-hour safety speed zone on the Beaver Country Day side, and other elements approved by the Transportation Board. These are the traffic calming elements. Along with the planner also plans to create a ADA compliant continuous sidewalk on both sides of Woodland Road. So on one side of Woodland Road, the Pine Manor side, there's a large gap where the sidewalk does not extend all the way to Hammond Street. The plan includes filling that in and
Right,
creating.
that'll be important when we have a school there.
Very important. And then as you jump over to the other side, there's no sidewalks on either side, so we're looking to create ADA compliant continuous sidewalk on one side of Woodland Road to improve pedestrian access. So the total for the traffic calming portion of that is the $265,000 that's requested.
Let me just nitpick you on something.
Sure.
It's not if and when Baldwin is built. It is when Baldwin is built.
Sounds good to me.
Let's
Sounds good to me.
Let's get the party line straight.
Absolutely. In terms of the bicycle access, these are three smaller projects that are grouped together. And these are the projects that made their way from the Bicycle Advisory Committee's Green Routes Master Network Plan. They chose what projects to work on this year. We designed them, they approved them, and then they go to the Transportation Board, which also approved them. And they include Ivy Street, Contraflow bicycle lane, basically to continue the existing Contraflow bicycle lane on the opposite side of Ivy Street to connect St. Mary's to Carlton Street, as well as St. Mary's Street, Montfort Street to Beacon Street, shared lane markings. And those are about making regional connections between, eventually, Mass DOT will reconstruct the St. Mary's Bridge, and included on that, with that are bike lanes that will link up to the Commonwealth Avenue bike lanes. So this will connect the Commonwealth Avenue bike lanes down St. Mary's Street, up Ivy Street to the Carlton Street connection that we have going and connecting it all the way to the Longwood Medical area and beyond. So it's about regional, sort of filling in these sort of regional gaps that we're looking to fill in. And the last is the bicycle portion of the Naples Road project. You'll remember Naples Road was part of the two-street Babcock Street Complete Streets plan. Babcock Street's being constructed this year. Naples Road portion will be constructed next year. And this includes the bicycle portion of that. There's also improvements at intersections that will be covered through the roadway project.
What about bicycle improvements on Harvard getting to Naples? I thought there was something that was being planned.
So those are not designed yet. We, within the pavement management plan, Harvard Street is coming up, that portion of Harvard Street, and that would be included in the project designs for that portion of Harvard Street.
Can I ask a question going back to St. Mary's Street?
Sure.
And maybe I missed it when you were talking. So Boston has the bicycle lanes between the curb and a parking lane for cars.
On Beacon Street.
I'm sorry, Beacon.
Yep.
What did I say? St. Mary's.
St. Mary's.
St. Mary's area. Are we thinking of doing something like that, or is that feasible on Beacon Street coming into Brookline?
So the Bicycle Advisory Committee is looking at various alternatives for improving Beacon Street bicycle accommodations. That is one of them. It's a parking protected bicycle lane. There, of course, also is the bridle path concept design, which is also being looked at as ways to improve bicycling on the entire corridor. So that is something the Bicycle Advisory Committee is looking at.
Okay. Anything else for the team? Okay, thank you. I see Mr. Simmons, but I think we're going to let him off easy.
Let's see.
Well, we know you're going to be the man of the hour as we go through these big building projects. So we'll let you rest on your laurels until the next project comes along. Anything else on the CIP? Okay, I think we're done with the CIP. Thank you.
A lot to read.
Okay, last item on our agenda are license renewals.
I'm going to try to help you walk through this, Mr. Chair.
Please, I need a lot of help.
Okay, I'm going to ask Justin to come up to the front row, so help me. He helped me work on this today, but if you look at the document that was placed today, it's entitled 14, and it includes both a cover memo from me that will guide your review, plus the entire list of renewals, and we refer to this document, Select Board renewals, and the date of it, so in your vote. So if you don't mind, the memo follows the categories of licenses that are in this large document. So the first of the license categories is alcohol license. These are all sorts of licenses, restaurants, and package stores. There's only one establishment that did not apply for renewal on time. It is our practice to allow them to do so by December 31st, and also to pay a late fee. If they don't do that, they have some real problems with us as well as the ABCC. So Faux Lemongrass of 239 Harvard is the one establishment that is in that condition. So there are other issues in the alcohol area that I wanted to bring to your attention, and they're listed in the memo. For example, Golden Temple, we may be in a position of having to bring in that owner of the restaurant in relation to unpaid taxes, although I'm told late today a check was submitted. So we'll wait to see if that clears, and we'll deal with that. But also, there's a number of other restaurants that are in different status. But bottom line is, at this point, we recommend that you renew all the licenses in the alcohol category, with the exception of Faux Lemongrass, which should receive a conditional approval. So I don't know if you want to do these by category or...
Okay, so why don't you give me the motion?
Okay, so I would recommend that you move to renew all of the licenses in the alcohol category pursuant to the Select Board renewal document dated December 18th, 2018, with the exception of Faux Lemongrass of 239 Harvard Street, whose renewal will be conditional upon applying by December 31st, 2018, and pay a late fee of $50.
I'm looking for one establishment on pages 2 and 3 of the supporting documentation. I don't see it.
Which ones are you looking for?
I'm looking for Regal Beagle.
Regal Beagle should be there.
Okay, so I have no problem with the plan. I just want to make sure that we've got all the paperwork lined up.
No, I don't think it is here. I don't think we are renewing them.
Well, that's my intent, so
Okay,
I'm pretty sure it's there. Justin?
On page,
Let me
on the
just...
second page of the memo, you say restaurant closed?
They are temporarily closed, but they are actively seeking a renewal. I'm looking for Regal Beagle.
So I'm fine with renewing the license. And then if there's not an ownership change in the reasonably near future, we can take appropriate action. I'm just calling out that it doesn't appear to be on this list, and
Well,
we should make
you
sure
know,
it ends up there.
It was earlier,
Yep.
and we made some changes to it today. So I would say then that, I would say under your vote, including the Regal Beagle, because apparently it must have dropped off this list. It was not our intent to do that.
Yep.
It is our intent. The only ones that I would say that are not being reopened and is Waxies and Oishi Sushi Bar.
So, okay, so Rainbow Sushi,
They just closed temporarily.
but I
because
don't
of-
see them on the list. Oh, yes, they are, toward the end.
Yep.
Yeah, toward the end. They're out of alphabetical order. Oh, I see how it works. It's all kinds
Yeah,
in alphabetical
line,
order, and then
subcategories.
And then, yeah, I see, okay.
I have a question about, we've heard recently some concerns about certain restaurants which seem to have a higher than usual police intervention for one reason or another. So I'm just wondering whether, if there's a pattern of that, it happens year after year, month after month, we should take a closer look at that and think about not renewing the license based on those issues, depending on what they are, But we haven't done that, I don't think.
We have not recommended revocation or non-renewal. First of all, we would have to have a hearing before we could do that. I look to the police department to make recommendations, and at this point, I don't believe they felt that, the totality of the issues would constitute justification for non-renewal at this point, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, so I'll move the motion that Mr. Kleckner made, but also including Regal Beagle. And if we missed anyone, I guess we'll have to retroactively do it next time we meet.
Well, the intent is pretty clear, so.
Right. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay,
Oh, and I have to vote. Chair votes aye.
next category is amusement license or coin-operated amusement devices. We have just a couple in there, no issues there, so recommend approval to renew those licenses within that category based on the list that appears on the Select Board renewal.
There's only two, so all those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller. Select Person Green.
Green, aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
What are the coin-operated machines?
boxes.
Just
Oh, no,
Really?
well, they're.
No, it's pinball machines.
Okay.
Video machines, video games,
Wow.
yeah.
Not too many video games or pinball machines in Brookline.
But the Elks Lodge has one.
Hey.
You need to get
Coolidge Corner
myself
Clubhouse.
invited.
The next category are Class 1 or 2 licenses, which allow the sale of secondhand motor vehicles, and there are several, but we have no concerns or conditional issues. So those are all appropriate for renewal in that category.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller. Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Common Vic.
Common victuals, these are restaurants without alcohol beverages, and there are a number, unfortunately, that didn't meet our deadline, so we would request that you approve all those in that category, but with these that are listed, from Allium Market down to Village Pizza House, that they be approved conditional upon submittal of the required paperwork by December 31st, and also the payment of a $50 late fee.
Okay.
I just want to call the board's attention to one common vic applicant. The town's Commission for the Disabled, of which I'm this board's representative, has received complaints about Jen Suen from mobility impaired customers who feel the establishment is not adequately accessible. I have not personally visited Jen Suen, but if complaints persist, and are substantiated by an investigation, I may come back to this board to request that we open an enforcement proceeding to compel compliance with the rules regarding equal access for all patrons and any site-specific obligations Gen Suen has.
Okay. That should be placed in the minutes. So all in favor of the motion as described by Mr. Kleckner, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller. Aye. Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next up.
The next group are general business licenses, first of those being the antiques or secondhand dealers. Two of those have not filed timely, so we recommend approval of all in that category, but conditional approvals for the two Goldsmith Company of on 1386 Beacon Street and Swiss Watch and Jewelry of 1618 Beacon Street, which is the requirement to submit paperwork by December 31st and pay a late fee of $50.
Okay. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
And then general business as a food vendor, and again, there's many of those, but three of those did not apply timely, so we recommend that you approve renewal of all those in the category general business, but that you condition catering to you, edible arrangements in Harvard Street, Sunoco, with the requirement to file by December 31st and pay the late fee of $50.
Okay. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next up
Next is
is,
a general business as an inn holder. There are no issues, although I didn't mean to disclose that the Holiday Inn is in a period of transition and will, I'm sure, be submitting new paperwork for that new, I don't believe that hotel will be affiliated with Holiday Inn any longer.
It's an independent now, I believe, yeah.
right.
But
I understand they're going to be renovating.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the inn holders?
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller. Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next up,
There are some issues here. However, I don't think that they're timely to not renew, but I will tell you that I think we're going to stay on top of these. These are all related to Pine Street Inn properties at the 1043, 1045 Beacon Street, which have some health issues. 1017 Beacon Street, 1754 Beacon Street, and 5153 Beale Street, which I think we already knew that the resident agents were not being timely assigned and approved by the board. So I'm not suggesting we don't renew them. In fact, we really have to do that because the board's not meeting again until the end of the year. But I'm expecting that these issues will be back to you early in the year to get resolved.
okay. So we'll renew them until we can have a hearing and hopefully perhaps even might be resolved before then, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller. Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
And the final are entertainment licenses. These are usually related to, in almost all cases, related to another underlying business, usually a restaurant. And so we support all the entertainment licenses that are on your list.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion on the entertainment licenses, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller. Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And is that it?
That's it.
Oh, we got through it. Okay, so I think we've done enough damage tonight. That concludes our business.
Thank you.